Hello and welcome. You are listening to the Investor Lab, the auditory epicenter for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And on today's show, I was joined by Julien Mougenot, the head of data and technology at Dashdot. And he, along with the rest of the team at Dashdot, is on a mission to transform the way the world invests. So it was a really great discussion to have with Julien, talking about his background, how he got started in property investing, and how he was actually an international investor far long before he became an Australian property investor, what that journey has looked like, and how he's ended up here. But more specifically, what I really enjoyed about this was some of the insights into, staying true to yourself and what that actually really means, and how to think about that kind of stuff. And I think some of the real big nuggets actually came towards the end, and there's a lot of gold in here. And I really enjoyed this. This episode, partly because it really started to pull back the curtain a little bit more on some of the inner workings of Dashdot, but also it's really great to hear how different people are approaching this pathway to personal wealth all through property investing and all of that kind of stuff. So without any further ado, let's get stuck into it. Let's get into my discussion with Julien, and I'll see you on the inside. Hey guys, welcome back to the Investor Lab. Joining me on today's show is a very special guest. I've been waiting to get this guy on the show for some time. Welcoming to the show, Julien Mougenot, the head of data and technology at Dashdot. Julien, how are you?
Good morning, Goose. I'm very well, thanks. Just coming out of COVID, so my voice is a bit broken, but I'm very pleased to be here today.
I'm really glad you could join us, because I know you've been recovering a little bit in the last week or so. So thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it. So, mate, because most of the people listening to this podcast don't know who you are, why don't you give us a little bit of an insight? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what do you do at Dashdot? Like, what is the head of data and tech? What do you do?
So, what we do is it's very simple, but can be summarized in a very simple terms. We use data and technology to make sure we are buying the right property in the right place at the right time. And ultimately, the reason why we're doing this is to maximize our clients' return and minimize their risk. That's what we do. That's our sole purpose.
That's a pretty worthy purpose. Okay. So I want to dig into a lot of that stuff, right? And we're going to be careful maybe not to give everyone the secret sauce, but I want to dig into that. But before we go there, how did you end up? Where did you go? You're obviously got a bit of an accent. Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about backstory. Where did you start?
So I was born in Paris, France, hence my accent. I born in Paris, grew up in the south of France, and then back to Paris for uni, where I graduated as a chemical engineer. And then I had this crazy idea when I graduated that basically all the engineers come up with great ideas, but they don't get the reward. People in sales and business get the financial rewards. So I decided when I graduated to move into management consulting, where I worked for a management consulting firm for, let's say, 4 years. I was pretty good at my job, but was getting bored. So I started doing interviews. And then from there, I did lots of interviews. From there, I could basically, as I was being interviewed, I could see where I would end up when I'm 50 or 60s. And that was a very boring outcome. So I said, no, I don't want this. And I decided to pack up my stuff and I moved to Australia 15 years ago. Yeah.
15 years ago, you moved to Australia.
Yeah. And I haven't lost my accent.
Now that's really interesting. Okay. So you're born in Paris, grew up in the south of France, went back to Paris, did your chemical engineering degree, realized that you didn't just want to be a cog in the wheel, that you wanted to do something more impactful, but then just couldn't seem to really see what that path was going to look like in France. And so you just said, so you moved to Australia. What was the goal moving to Australia?
So I was convinced that if you want to have an international career, you need to speak English. So I was looking for a country where I could learn English. So my options were the UK, the US, Canada, and Australia.
Yep.
So I lived in the UK, didn't really like it. French English story goes back centuries. US, it's hard to get a visa. Spent a couple of months there, but hard to get a visa. So I was left with Canada and Australia. But because I grew up in the south of France, I like the sun. Right? So I just said, Australia it is. And I landed in Sydney in 2006. Yeah. Just
nice.
At the time with a working holiday visa. And it's been an awesome experience.
Could you speak English when you arrived? Like you said, you wanted to move to an English-speaking country so you could learn. Like what on a scale of 1 to 10? Like what level was your English at when you moved to Australia?
Let's say 4. I've never been very good at learning languages. I'm more like a number person, science stuff. So yeah, I studied English for a couple of years, obviously at school. That's what we do in France. But yeah, I wasn't very good at it. So the only way for me to learn is to practice. So I just jump on the boat.
Yeah.
And learn from there.
That's interesting because musical people or creative people pick up languages way easier. And yeah, so yeah, I've actually always found it really easy. I just go to a country and I'm like speaking a language like really, really quickly. It's quite funny. So, but tell me a little bit about what happened then. So you moved over, your English is a level 4 out of 10. And then what?
So what happened, I managed to score a job at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the management consulting. That was my background. That was brutal. And by the way, thank you PwC because it gave me the chance to work on amazing projects despite my language career. Language skills. And yeah, so I started there 2 years, 2 years and a half, and then one of my clients offered me a job. Funnily enough, that was 2009 during the GFC. And that was interesting because in that move, I doubled my salary, which was in a time where people were basically losing their jobs and everything. I think I never increased my wealth so much than during this time, just coincidentally. And then, yeah, my client offered me a job. I worked for this firm for 7-8 years. Along the way, I lost a little bit a sense of purpose. Because it's kind of all of my career, I've jumped from one opportunities to another, and my only, I would say, key decision factor was money. Mainly, so I could say to my father, "I'm earning more money than you do, so just give him the finger." Excuse my French. But then, yeah, along the way, I lost like what I was really enjoying doing, and I lost my purpose, and I get to a point where I realize I don't enjoy what I'm doing, and I don't like the people I'm working for, particularly the people I'm reporting to. So by that time, I was 38 years old, and then maybe midlife crisis. I asked myself, okay, what is it really you like doing? And it took me 2 years. It's a long process to really find yourself again.
Yeah, particularly if you're a long way off track, like.
Yes. Yeah. So I was by that time I was maybe 15 years off track, right? Because I just like this stupid thought from the moment I graduated in chemical engineering to, I'm going to move in business because they're making money and it's not fair to the engineer. But then, I've learned a lot along these 15 years, but maybe that's not what I was meant to do.
Interesting. That's pretty interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people actually do a quite similar thing. Like they don't really, like in their like early 20s and stuff like that, they don't really think about like what do they want out of life. They just get railroaded mentally or whatever into thinking, all right, I guess I've just got to get a good job and earn lots of money, and that's the goal, right? So what, like, I'm interested in that transition, like that kind of like 2-year metamorphosis from being lost to to found, for lack of a better term. Like, where did you land? Like, what did you decide was like the impact that you wanted to create? Well, what did you need to do differently?
So the first thing is, okay, what is I really enjoy doing? And it boils down to three things, right? I love property investment. I love tech, and I love data. And then say, okay, I love doing these things. I think I'm good at it. So what can I do with it? And it was 2017. So what I decided in 2017 is to create my own startup, which was called 2D. And this startup was a prop tech company using data, AI, machine learning to basically identify emerging markets in Australia. Yes.
So when did you start first? When did you start getting interested in property investing? Like, were you investing in France or? So
it started crossing my mind, but really, I caught the bug when I moved to Australia, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, the kind of a property market didn't make any sense to me. You know, like I landed in Bondi when I arrived in Australia, and I just felt like, especially having a European background, saying what you pay for what you get is just doesn't make any sense.
Why is that? Why is that? Is the properties cheaper in Europe, or what do you mean?
Yeah, compare I remember in Bondi you get a studio for today's market at least $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, for $1 million in France, you can get a villa in the south of France, or in the US, you get a mansion. Or in Bondi, or respect to Bondi, you get a studio. And Bondi, okay, it's nice, you got the beach, but it's not that, that amazing as well. All right. So, and also there's also all these myths about, the market doubled in 10 years, negative gearing, a couple of things like this that just when you really think about it, it just doesn't make any sense. So what I did in the meantime, I invested in property, but not in Australia. And what I started doing is buying properties in the US during the GFC and the mortgage subprime. During the subprime mortgage crisis. Yes. So that's what I did. So with one of my friends, we jumped on the plane. We had a bit of saving. It was specializing in construction, so he could tell, just by knocking on the walls if it's a good house or if it's a bad house. And the way I would inspect a property was completely different from his. He would just touch things and say, yeah, it's good. Whereas I'm like, oh yeah, that looks nice. Anyway, we jump on the plane. We got a bit of savings. We check hundreds of properties, and we ended up buying 6 properties. That was good fun. That was intense. And I remember we started in Florida, and we said we were planning to go to Ohio after that. But by the time we got finished with Florida, we ran out of money. So just we didn't make it to Ohio. Yeah. That was fun. Yes.
Do you still own those properties?
No, we sold them. We sold them in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
The main reason for this, because the market was going up, still going up. I was going through divorce, and my partner at the time thought that they were worth millions. When in fact, each house we bought them for around $50K US dollar. So the only way to land on the real price was to sell them.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so and they were your first property investments were in the US?
Yes.
That's quite funny. So you grew up in France, moved to Australia, and then the first properties you bought were in the US.
Yes. Yeah, that was that. And then along the way, we used the rent from these properties because we bought them cash. So all the rent was going on the bank account, and then we use this money to buy land in Lombok. Because one of my friends who was living in Hong Kong, he was a financial trader, but this tip that basically Lombok is going to become the next Bali, and now you can really grab land for cheap. So we say, okay, let's use our money to buy land in Lombok, but there's no tax over there because they contract when you bought things and everything. So it just like seems to go. I haven't really kept an eye on it, but it seems that the market is going up, and at some stage we want to build a resort over there, a resort and or a villa where we can retire.
Awesome. That sounds good. So how much, you said you're passionate about property investing, data and technology. How much data was going into the decision-making processes around like buying the land in Lombok? Or was the data just based around you guys riding around on scooters going, oh, this looks awesome?
Yeah, the latest actually. It was land, it wasn't property, so there's not much to model. It was more just about believing whether or not Lombok is going to be an emerging market. And there was two factors for this that made me make my decision. The first one is to just open an international airport.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't do that for any reasons. And they've got a $6 billion, I think even more than that, $6 billion resort they're building in Kuta in the south of Lombok.
Yeah.
With like a motor, a bike, or what's it?
GP, MotoGP track and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So you don't invest that much of money for no reason. So these were for me that was two very good growth drivers. And also the beaches are more beautiful than they are in Bali.
Oh, they're way more beautiful than they are in Bali, aren't they? They're so much better than Bali. Oh, yeah. And it's interesting because when I went over there for the first time, which I think was about 10 years ago, I was eyeing off some land as well in the south because I was looking at the beach. I was going, they're building an international airport and like all the same kind of stuff. Now at the time, I didn't have any capital to be able to invest in the land, but I wish I did because the land that I was looking at then was about $10,000, and I think that would be probably 10 times or
it's about that
50 times more. Maybe it's significantly more expensive now. So awesome. So your property investing journey started overseas. When did you start actually investing in Australia? I'm going to get back to the data and tech piece, but I'm interested to understand this part of the journey. Tell me about that.
So 2017, I decided to create a prop tech startup specializing in identifying emerging market in Australia. So 15,300 plus suburbs to play with, and develop an algo, and I had to demonstrate that it works, right? And at that time, the algo picked Moranbah, mining town, right? And what I love doing is picking either market that crashed with good drivers to recover, like that was the US, for example, right? And then Moranbah, mining town, market crashed after the mining boom, but there was some significant project coming up. So I decided to buy a house over there. So I bought a house for $210, something like that.
210,000, just to be clear.
$210,000. Very brick house, 3 bedrooms, very good condition, double garage, everything ticking all the boxes. Tenanted, 10% rental yield, and 2 years later, I think I sold them for about $400K.
Nice.
Yeah. And again, that was just to prove the case that the algorithm works with the aim to raise capital. And then, so then I started an exercise of raising capital, and then with investors, it's never good enough. I say, yes, that's just one that might be luck. Right? So I wish I could have bought more, but then I was limited by capital. Right? And then recently, I bought a second one using the same algorithm in Gladstone, Kincora, for $310,000. And now I'm in the process of selling it. Listing price. So it's been listed actually this week. Listing price is at $480.
Nice. And you bought that for 310. How long ago?
Yeah.
Like a couple of years ago.
2 years ago, max. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Sweet. So okay, so you started the prop tech startup, which was 2D. Yeah. Obviously, we met during that period of time, which was a very fateful interaction.
Yeah. So the story, So the story was, so I was trying to raise capital. Everything was lined up. We decided to go for crowdfunding. The campaign was meant to be launched the 23rd of March, 2020. And guess what happened in this pretty much exact same date? COVID. So that was basically everything goes to the bin, right? And we reached a point where we really need capital. And at the time, we also were, so that wasn't very good news for us. And at the time, you were one of our clients, and I think we were getting along pretty well, and we decided to join forces.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
And I joined Dashdot in January 2021.
Awesome. So I'm interested, and it's been a very fun ride since then. I'm interested to know now, like
over the we can say.
Yeah, indeed. So it's now been nearly a year and whatever it is, 4 months or something like that we've been working together. What's changed now about your perspective around the property market, right? Because I know that you've personally bought another property using Dashdot services. I want to talk about that because I want to get because you've got some pretty interesting insights on what that's like from a client side. But what's different now on this, now that we've been on this journey together? Like, what are the, there's been a lot that's happened in the last year and a bit, particularly around how we understand markets and stuff like that. What's the biggest shift for you?
I'm not sure if we can say that. So basically, there's a big shift happening at the moment where I was convinced so far that the property market is like any commodity market.
Yep.
It's a supply and demand. It's all about supply and demand. If you understand supply and demand, you're going to be able to work out if prices are going to go up or down. Okay. Now, it happens that it might not be the case.
It's sometimes, you can sometimes find that is correlated though, because that has been pretty good.
Yeah. It's kind of, might not be the case in such a way. It's more than that. Right. So supply and demand still applies.
Yep.
But there's more to it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's not give away all the secret sauce because it's pretty interesting. There's some pretty interesting stuff coming along. So I'm interested. Let's kind of wrap up your property journey because I want to ask a few other questions as well. But obviously you and your partner Siobhan bought another property recently as well. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of friction to buy properties. I don't know whether it's in any countries, okay? Whether it's in Indonesia, in the US, in Australia, they all have their different frictions, and it's a bit of a painful process. That especially it's a lot of red tape. So, and it requires personal involvement, right? And Siobhan and I decided to become a Dashdot client to buy our first property, and to build a prosperous portfolio over time, right, to achieve our financial goal. And I knew we had a good process, but when I went through the process, and I'm not saying this because I work at Dashdot, I was amazed about, and I'm not getting impressed like this, I was amazed how good the process was.
You're French, you don't get impressed easily.
Yes. Yeah. So, so it's just like, I think from start to end, I may have spent 5 hours max from the moment I say, here's where we are, here's what we want to achieve in life, here's our financial situation, to the moment I had a tenant in the property that is positively geared.
Yeah.
And so far, it's been an amazing journey. Yeah. And as I said, I spent maybe 5 hours max from start to finish.
Because you were already working at Dashdot before you before you said, right, I'm going to become a client and go buy a property and do all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
How different was it from like what you were already working at Dashdot and then you had that experience. So how different was it from what you expected versus what you received?
Well, first is the quality of the people you interact with. Right? And you're just here to make your journey like frictionless. And the other thing, this is they go above and beyond what I was expecting. For example, we need to do a building and pest report. Right? So I thought I would have to go through it and then extract what needs to be done and what needs to be addressed. And I said, it's going to take time. Like building and pest report is not the best, most interesting read. And what I got from them is just, hey, Julien, we went through the report. Here's all the things that needs to be addressed. If you're okay with that, we're going to ask basically the vendor to give us a discount. So everything was done. All I had to say, yeah, makes sense. Yes, paying 5 minutes. Awesome. And I think that's the moment where I say, they really go the extra step. And that's where I say, it's beyond my expectations.
Yeah. Awesome. So you've bought a few properties now you've obviously bought 6 properties in the US. You've got land in Lombok. You've bought and sold a couple of properties in Australia. You've got another property now. What are the biggest lessons that you've learned specifically about property investing that you would be able to share with somebody else?
So the touch wood so far, I didn't have bad experiences. Right? They've been all like profitable investment. But what I can talk about are the rules I'm applying. So the first one, number one, is buy with your brain, not with your heart. Right? It's an investment. It's about numbers. Okay? The second one is think about the worst scenario. And if you can live with it, go ahead. And I always think about the worst scenario. For me, like if I can see that the worst scenario is, I don't think the property prices will go down. Worst case scenarios, they stay where they are. I'm fine with it. And the third one is surround yourself with people complementing your skills. So when I went to the US, we know the market was flooded with mainly bad assets, right? And I'm not a builder, right? So that's why I went with my friend, who basically just by looking at the property and touching it would be able to tell you if the property is built on sound foundations or not.
Yeah.
So always surround yourself with where you have gaps. That would be my third advice.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And have you got given that you said that when you moved to Australia, you're a bit confused by the property market and all of that kind of stuff because you're like, hey, how does this work? What are some kind of like common beliefs or common mistakes you see people making or believing in property? For example, I know negative gearing's a pretty interesting one, but are there any mistakes that you've seen people make because you've had exposure to a bunch of different investors doing a bunch of different things? Like what are some of the traps that people can avoid?
Yes, so negative gearing, I think, is only works in certain conditions, and most of the time it's when you are very wealthy and you need to grab tax benefit.
Yep.
But otherwise, personally, it doesn't make any sense. I'd rather make $1 on the property than paying less tax because I'm losing money. So that's the first one. The second one is I just find people prefer to invest in market that already went up 50%. I don't know, it gives them a sense of comfort. Oh, look, it went up 50%. It's got further to go.
Yeah.
I just like, you're too late when you've reached that point. And what's likely to happen is like prices will go down. But I don't know, like I've seen that most of the time. I don't know, it just reassure people that price went up. And then they get burned because the market crashed or corrected itself.
Or at the very least flatlines, right?
Or flatlines. Yeah, absolutely. And then you're wasting like 8 years of nothing. Yeah. And the third one, actually, speaking of 8 years, is that property prices double every 8 to 10 years.
Which is nonsense.
Which is the biggest myth ever.
Yeah. Some places they double faster. Most places they don't.
Yeah. So what we're trying to capture in our models is really what we call the S curve. And what you find is even at suburb level, like property markets tend to grow between, let's say, 10 to 30% within 2 to 3 years. And then they flatten, and then they go through another growth. So far, according to the restaurant property market history. So what we're trying to really capture for our client is the S curve, right? So when it's about to start, and then when it's finished, we say, depending on each client profile, it's either you hold your asset or you may as well sell it and then capture another S curve in another market with another property.
Yeah.
And that's how you can accelerate things.
So tell us a little bit about then data and technology at Dashdot. So
before we do so, there's one thing, when you ask me what are the advice I could give when buying one property, and there's one thing I didn't have and I'm missing, and that's what I'm looking for very much with Dashdot. I bought all these properties, but I don't have a strategy. Right? So I bought here and there, but I just, did that get me anywhere? Not really. And because all these like purchase and selling don't feel in an overall strategy. And that's why I'm getting with Dashdot. That's why I like. So we bought the first one, but I know it's within the framework of a given strategy. So I know where we're going. So we've got clear goals, clear paths, and we're going in that direction. And everything we do is to move toward that direction. Whereas so far, what I've been doing, I've been in the US, being on back fun, but did that make me really wealthier? Whatever.
Yeah. It's sporadic. Yeah.
It's I don't think so. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. And that's what I see most property investors doing is they'll buy and they'll sell and they'll do stuff and, they'll often make some money and stuff, but there's no strategy. There's no actually, it's not necessarily step by step getting you closer to your goal. You're just doing a bunch of stuff and you may end up financially up, but it's not necessarily like specifically a path that you're going to follow to get to where you want to go faster, which is, I think, honestly, part of the reason why most of our clients get to their goals so much faster than everybody else, because it's like, okay, start here, get to there, bang. And you know exactly where you're going. You're not wandering around through the woods, doing random things,
Absolutely. Yes. And that's a key differentiator, I think, with Dashdot.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. That's a really good insight. That's a really good insight, particularly because like you're quite familiar with investing in property and financials and all of that kind of stuff. And then to get to that point and only now be like, oh, okay, now I know where I'm going. That's really good insight.
Yeah, that's a big piece I was missing so far. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk about data and technology team, right? Because I know that a lot of people out there don't really understand what happens in the back of Dashdot. And without kind of like revealing any of our deep, dark secrets, can you give us a sense of how big is the data and technology team? What kind of like skills and capabilities do we have? Like, because from the outside, most people probably don't even know that we have a whole dedicated team, like trying to solve the property market. So talk a little bit about that.
So to give you a sense of growth, so when I started in January 2021, that was just me. Now we are 14. So we grew the team by 14 staff in less than a year and a half. And we're targeting to be 20 by the end of this quarter. Now, the team is structured in, I would say, 3 main streams. We've got the data science team. Right? They do data science. Okay, so they ingest a lot of data to really understand the driver of the property market. We've got market research scientists. We've got 2, and what they do, they use they specialize in. They more like have a financials background, economics background. We've got one of them. He's got a PhD in micro markets. He worked at NASDAQ. He's a quant. So the they've got a more like theoretical approach to understanding market as opposed to just having a number approach and machine learning approach that you get in data science, right? So they've got this more market science theory approach.
Yeah.
So that's the second stream. And the third stream, we've got a development team. So what they do, we take all the findings from the market research and data science, and we package all of that into an app that is used internally by our property team to identify the right property at the right time in the right location.
Yep, exactly. What's the goal then? Like, what do you like? We're building out this team. We're building out this superpower tech and science team, and like doing experiments. There's like so many experiments and stuff going on all the time. What's the goal? Like, what do you want to like? What do you hope that the team is going to achieve?
I genuinely believe the property market needs is broken or need a refresh. You know, in the same way that Uber changed the transport market, I think the property market is overdue for a similar change.
Yeah,
and that's what we're doing. And I'll be happy when I'll have a sense of satisfaction when we reach a stage where you find the property that is a perfect match for your profile, and you just have to say add to cart.
Yeah, 100%. The key there is like the right property for you, right? Because it's like, you know, buying properties is great, but how do you actually know if the property you're buying is actually the right one for you and is actually going to get you to where you want to go? Like that's the big question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can take 3 clients; they will have 3 different needs, and we will provide 3 different types of properties.
Yeah, 100%.
One of them might need cash flow because I don't know, is in his late 50s. Another one need growth because that's his first property investment. Another client may already have 3 properties and he needs to refinance. He's going to need a mix of growth and cash flow. So it's all these things you need to take into consideration, and maybe negative gearing might be the right option for certain clients as well, depending on their portfolio.
Absolutely.
So it's a very complex beast. Let's put it this way.
So, okay. So let's take a little step back. So you were doing all your consulting stuff. You had a midlife crisis when you thought, hang on a second, I need to do something that's going to follow my passion. It's going to involve data, technology, property. I'm on that path. Do you feel like you're now living your purpose? Do you feel like you're on the path of more fulfillment, more meaning? That's not a loaded question. I'm interested. Reflecting back. Like, do you feel like that when you decided that you were going to exit your management consulting career versus now, like, do you feel like you landed where you needed to land, or do you feel like there's still more to go?
Oh, absolutely. Like, let's put it this way. What I'm doing is not a job. When I wake up every morning, I just love what I'm doing. Love my team. Love Dashdot. It's not a job. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's but yeah, it's always
a very active hobby.
Yeah, very active hobby. Yeah, absolutely. And no, it's awesome. And it's just also the potential is just unlimited. Where we're going, the vision is just mind blowing. And
what does success look like to you now? Because like success at one point was making enough money to be able to stick it to your dad, basically, and then you've had a pivot. What is like good that you're now doing something that you love and all of that kind of stuff? But what does success look like? What are you aiming for? You're still planning on investing in property? Like you're shooting for something. What does that look like?
So success look like, so obviously, as I mentioned, I want to transform the property market. I want a happy and healthy family. I don't want to have to worry about my financial future and their future as well. So financial freedom. I genuinely believe I'm an entrepreneur. So I want to be a successful entrepreneur, and that's Dashdot is basically supporting me in that way. I want to share my time between Europe and Australia, potentially the US, chasing the sun. And I love sports cars. So if I can have a nice sports car collection, that would be nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
And would you want to split your time between Australia and Europe? Would you be in the south of France again?
That's where my parents live. So yes, that's where it would be. Because my partner is from Australia, I think London. So it would be London and Sydney.
Interesting.
But then from London, I can just jump in a plane in an hour, see my parents because they start getting old. So I will see them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I quite like the south of France. Quite enjoyed.
It's nice. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, south of France, Italy, it's beautiful.
Nice. Yeah. And how do you stay on track towards that vision? Like, do you have any habits or rituals that you use to stay like focused on your goals?
Yeah. So I've got two. One I'm good at. One I'm good at. The other one I wish I would do more because it already works. I'm going to explain. So the one we're doing with my partner, we've got a vision board.
Yeah.
All right. That we review each year. All right. So each year we basically revisit completely the vision board. It's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
And each quarter we assess how we're tracking against your 1 year vision board.
Nice. Okay? That's a good system.
Yes. And the other thing is I genuinely believe that life will give you what you want as long as you clearly know what you want.
Yes.
All right. And when I say clearly know what you want, so, I want to get rich. No. So, I want to get what does that mean? Like to the dot. Right. And then once you're clear on that, I've got a meditation. It's a 30-minute meditation that just where you visualize what you want, but also then it drives you to what you're visualizing is to understand the emotions it creates for you. And I think like whatever you call it, the universe or higher force, understand the emotion associated with what you want. And that's how you get it. I don't want to go too deep, but
no, I think it's awesome.
Every time I've done it, it works like crazy. But then I'm getting distracted by life. And I wish I would do it every day because it just works. But I'm getting distracted by life, I just had a baby recently, so it just takes a lot of time. Plus, Dashdot is very what do you say? Not demanding, but takes
immersive.
Thank you. Immersive job. So distract me from doing this. Is that an excuse? Maybe not. But I wish I would do it more because it just works. It's
so interesting that you say that because I'm kind of the same, right? So firstly, what you said there about you can have whatever you want. You just need to decide what that is. I say that all the time. You can have absolutely anything that you want in life as long as you can clearly define what that is. And that comes down to interpersonal relationships, right? It also comes down to like manifesting what you want out of the universe. And it's all true. And to your point, every time that I've spent time in this space, the things actually happen. I also have another mantra that I use regularly, that the universe will give me everything that I want as fast as I want and in the volume that I desire, as long as I define what it is and believe in it. You have to actually believe in it, because if you're just like, I just want something, you have to actually, you have to truly believe it. But also, like, I've been a bit distracted over the last little while, and I'm like, I've actually recently been going back over this stuff, going, okay, I need to get back. I need to get back into that state. So that's really interesting.
And it requires like bit of mental effort as well. So you need to have if you're exhausted, you just don't have the strength to do it. Like even when we do our vision board, we have to be in a specific mindset to do it. Because it's not like, let's have some fun and just like, let's,
No, I agree with you, but I think where people go wrong with that though is that they think, I've got to be in a certain state to do it. So unless I'm in that state, I'm not going to put in the effort to do it. But sometimes you actually need to start doing it, even when it doesn't feel comfortable, right? And even if you know that you're probably not going to get it right, just to try and start getting there. Because if you haven't ever done a vision board before, or if you haven't done it in some time, right, it's going to feel a little awkward and a little uncomfortable. And you're going to be like putting stuff there, and then you're going to be like, but what if I get it wrong? And what if it's not right? But the point is that as you do the exercise, and it could be journaling, you could be journaling the thing that you want or whatever. As you go through the exercise, you're actually going to you'll actually start to feel, does that actually resonate with me? Right now, I know that you've got a penchant for Aston Martins and all of that kind of stuff. But if I put an Aston Martin on my vision board, I might be like, yeah, that's cool. But then I'll feel like, okay, is that sticky for me? Is that sticky for me? Is that really the thing that is going to make my heart shine? And it's that process of going through that allows you to weed through all of the noise and eventually to get to the things that matter really most to you. You know, it's
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, mate, time for the final question. So imagine it's your last day on Earth, right? You've ticked all the boxes. You've got the sports car collection. You've transformed the property market. You've achieved everything that you hoped and dreamed and desired in life. You've ticked all of the boxes. You've filled your cup. You've done everything. But the moment that you pass, everything that you've ever created or had or everything that you've ever known is ever going to be wiped from the face of the earth. No record of you ever existing. But the only thing that you can leave behind is 3 simple truths that you're going to be able to give to the world. What are those truths?
Well, the first one will be always stay true to yourself. It's not easy. I've made the mistakes, as we discussed a couple of times, to drift away from who I truly was. So always stay true to yourself. And the threat here is don't let people tell you who you are. Right? So that's number one. Always stay true to yourself. Take risk, right? But measured risk. Don't be scared. Like people make like a big deal about, oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to. I just find every time I took risk, I always end up being easier than I thought, and always paid off. Obviously, don't take stupid risk, but don't be scared. Take risk, just do it. And the third one is probably also my favorite, never be gray. Nothing great happen in the middle. So be black, be white, but don't be gray. And obviously do it with balance. Don't be always black or always white. You know, you've got to alternate, right? Bit of black, a bit of white. So like when you at the end you end up being great, but you don't stay in the middle because nothing great happen in the middle. It's boring.
Yeah, beauty's always on the edges. Like beauty's always at the extremes. But to your point, you don't want to be all one way, right? You don't want to be like, for example, let's say it's like money and spirituality, right? They're kind of like generally seem to be opposing things. If you go all the way to the extreme of money, forget about spirituality, you're going to get lost. But if you just try and operate in some middle ground, you're never going to get the best of either of them, you know? So
absolutely. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
I love that, Julien. Julien, it's been really good to have you on. I'd actually love to get you on again, maybe when we can actually talk a little bit more about the science of property, because I feel like that would be a pretty interesting discussion for us to kind of dig into and debunk some myths, perhaps. Are you up for that?
It would be a pleasure.
Awesome. Sweet,
Anytime.
Well, thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks again for joining me on the show. I'll speak to you soon.